Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Shulchan Aruch Yomi. Today we'll be concluding our 12th week. 12th week. It's 3 months. Shulchan Aruch Yomi is pretty darn good. We're doing Siman Samich, continuing Hilchos Krias Shema. This Siman is about Din Brachos, the Krias Shema, and Srichos Kavana. We're going to learn, this is a concept throughout all mitzvahs, whether you have to have Kavana to perform the mitzvah or not, meaning intention. Discuss more what that means, intention to perform the mitzvah. And the first major mitzvah where it's talked about is Hilchos Krias Shema. Let's get right into it. Halacha Aleph, Bracha Shnia Avas Olam. Continuing from yesterday, we talked about the Bracha Rishona before Krias Shema. There's two brachos before Krias Shema in the morning. The second bracha is Avas Olam. Haggadah, the Ramaz of Yeshom Rabba Rabba, Ashkenaz, right? The Sephardim have the minute say Avas Olam, the Ashkenazim they say Ava Rabba. It doesn't start with a Baruch. Or there's a concept of bracha smucha l'chaverta, two brachas that are next to each other. Second bracha doesn't need to start with bracha because it relies on the bracha at the end of the previous bracha. If it's good enough to exempt you, if you didn't say the bracha started before saying Krias Shema and saying Ava Rabba, if that exempts you or not, look back at Sim Mem Zion. So go back to that shir, number 47, or Chaim, and check it out, because I'm not going to tell you what the halacha is. Actually, we discussed it yesterday in Ian of the Shulchan Aruch. So you can go there, reference it, find out what I said about it. And I'll remind you again during Ian on this Siman, on Siman Samich. Is Kara Krias Shema below bracha. If you read Krias Shema without a bracha, Yotzi Decha was Krias Shema, right? Yotzi Krias Shema, the mitzvah of Krias Shema, even whatever type of bracha it is, it's Bercha Sheach Odah, Berchas HaMitzvah. Even if you do a mitzvah without making a bracha, Yotzi the mitzvah, V'chozer V'korya brachos below Krias Shema. You're supposed to make it up. It's also a mitzvah to say the brachos. But nearly, the Shulchan Aruch is an interesting. Shetov Lachzor V'likros Krias Shema Ima brachos. What's his source for saying this? Veneerally. It's not clear, and the Bir Halacha, which is the more in-depth explanation of the Chavetz Chaim, he says, the Pri Megadim says it's because he's Choshesh for Rav Haigon, Del Yatsa Ketikuna below Brachos. Hula Pelo, he says, it's a wonder. Da'alo afilu l'das Rav Hai. HaSeder eno ma'akev klal. Kim shechozer ach Krias Shema Brachos Yatsa Yidechos Krias Shema Ketikuna. Not clear what the source is for the Shulchan Aruch. He says you should, when you're going back and repeating and saying the Brachos Krias Shema the first time that you missed, originally you should say it along with Krias Shema. Where does Shulchan Aruch get it from? Chavetz Chaim is not sure. Pri Megadim is not sure. I'll tell you where he gets it from. And Ian Shulchan Aruch, which makes a lot of sense to me, based on what he said yesterday. Gimel, say there Brachos eno ma'akev. You say them out of order. Technically, you say Ava Rabba before Yotzer, or Shem Hiktim Shniel Rishon Yotzi Dechovas Brachos, or still Yotzi the Brachos. Dalad Yesh Omrim Shein Mitzvah Srichas Kavana. Here it is. Some say, this is the opinion of Tosos and Rabbeinu Yon, it's Machlokes Rishonim. Right, the Gemara is a Machlokes. Mitzvah Srichas Kavana, Mitzvah Lo Srichas Kavana. It's a big Machlokes in the Gemara. Some say we pass, and they don't need Kavana. Yesh Omrim Srichas Kavana. Latzeitz Ba'asiyas Osa Mitzvah V'chein Halacha. What is the Kavana needed? Some say you do need kavana. You have to have kavana in mind that I am fulfilling a mitzvah through whatever I'm doing. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins, the halacha is mitzvahs shrichas kavana. Quickly, the Mishnah Berurah adds, this is the only way mitzvahs d'oraisa. When it comes to mitzvahs d'rabbanan, like brachos, or things like that, or lighting Chanukah candles, or mikra Megillah, b'diavad, you don't need kavana. L'chadchila you're supposed to have kavana, but b'diavad you don't need kavana. When it comes to d'oraisa, most poskim hold, like the Shulchan Aruch, V'chein Halacha, he paskins that you need kavana. I want to mention an important Chayei Adam over here, which Mishnah Berurah brings. He says, and it's very clear the Chayei Adam is getting from this Gemara, from the Gemara, because the Gemara's cases where it's a question whether you need kavana or don't kavana are interesting cases. For example, the Gemara in Brachos talks about someone who's a sofer and he's fixing a Sefer Torah, or he's writing a Sefer Torah, and he gets into the parsha of Krias Shema, right? And he doesn't have intent to fulfill the mitzvah. So the Gemara says, do you say shrichos kavana or not shrichos kavana? The Mishnah says tzarech l'chaven. He has to be mechaven for the mitzvah. Also, when it comes to the Krias shofar, the Gemara Rosh Hashanah says that if he's doing it to learn how to blow shofar, right? It happens to be on Rosh Hashanah, he's learning how to blow shofar because they figured out the Baal Tokea died that being a little dramatic over there. He died Rosh Hashanah morning. When was his death decided? At the previous Rosh Hashanah or that Rosh Hashanah? It's for you to figure out. They have no Baal Tokea, so he's learning how to blow Tkias shofar, or he's teaching him how to blow Tkias shofar on Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says if you hold mitzvah strichas kavanah, you're not yotzei. If you hold mitzvah and strichas kavanah, you're yotzei. Chayyim says, I think is based on these Gemaras, is that the whole idea of mitzvah strichas kavanah, mitzvah not strichas kavanah, is only in a case where it's obvious that you're not doing it for the mitzvah. You're correcting a sefer Torah. You're teaching someone how to blow shofar. If you're standing in the middle of shul and someone gets up and says, "Okay, everybody, these are the halachas of tkiyas shofar," right? I realize this is like extended, like every year they make it longer and longer. Okay, you have to have kavanah for the bracha rishona, and you have to have kavanah for the shechiyanu, and you have to mechavin l'shem mitzvah. And once they make this tkiyas, you can't talk for the whole thing. And I even warned in one place, you can't even move from your dalet amos for the whole 100 kilos, and you can't even talk, and you can't go to the bathroom, and you can't blink, and you can't breathe. A lot of those things, the last two were jokes, but the other ones, I have heard people say all those rules. They're getting up, tkiyas shofar, zeh hayom kivinu lo. This is the moment. This is the time we're waiting for. Tkiyas shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Even regular Krias Shema in the morning, you go to a minyan, you daven with a minyan. You're not fixing a sefer Torah over here. The Chayyim says that if it's obvious from the situation that you're doing the mitzvah, right? You're saying tefillah, you're davening Krias Shema, you're saying Krias Shema after the brachos. You're in a shul where everyone's shaking lulav and waving it during Hallel. If it's obvious from the situation that you're doing a mitzvah, it has to be obvious that you're not doing the mitzvah. And then there's a shaila whether you have to mechavin or not. But if it's obvious, even if it's not obvious you're doing the mitzvah, if it's stam, right? It has to be, from the seams of the Gemara, it has to be obvious you're not doing the mitzvah. You're correcting a sefer. You're correcting a sefer. You're teaching someone how to blow shofar. Then there's a shaila whether you have to mechavin for the mitzvah. Everyone agrees. If you're trying to do a mitzvah, I've heard so many shilas. I had a lot of shilas back then. Was I mechavin? Like I remember this halacha the Mishnah Berurah brings. Like you're supposed to on shofar on Rosh Hashanah, you're supposed to, when you come into shul in the morning, if you have in mind to be lattes the mitzvah, when you come into shul, you don't have to have kavanah when the tkiyas shofar. It suffices for that. So I'm always like wondering, did I have kavanah? And then even after, the guy tells me, okay, everyone have kavanah for the mitzvah, and then he starts blowing shofar. I'm like, did I have kavanah? And then in your mind you're like thinking, do I have to say? You can say things in your mind. You can say in your mind, I am having kavanah for the mitzvah of tkiyas shofar. Could you just think it? People get obsessed with these things. It can be kind of crazy. Did I have kavanah? Did I not have kavanah? The Chayyim says don't worry about it. And this is the halacha that if it's obvious from the situation that you're doing the mitzvah, you're in a Jewish environment, Jewish community, and that's what they're practicing over here. You don't have to worry about having in mind for anything, because of course, assume you're doing the mitzvah. He does say this is the Chayyim saying it's a bit but I think it's the chachila from the Gemara. The Gemara sounds like only a situation where it's obvious you're not planning on doing the mitzvah, then you have to intend to do the mitzvah. Kavanah means you have to be, and also I don't think kavanah means you have to have kavanah latzesi dechovas hamitzvah. What do you mean to free myself from the obligation to do the mitzvah? No, you just have to have intention to know what you're doing, to know that you're doing a mitzvah now. I intend to do the mitzvah. You don't have to think anything. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to have in the l'shem mitzvah. You don't have to l'shem yichud before the mitzvah. You don't have to do all those things. No, like the Gemara says, if you're correcting a sefer Torah, I have in mind, okay, when I'm saying the words in Krias Shema, right, you're supposed to say the words, like we learn when you write a sefer Torah, you're supposed to say the words. So I'm saying the words, or at least look at the other sefer Torah you're copying from. Maybe when you're saying the words, have in mind you're doing it in the mitzvah. Doing the mitzvah. It's very simple, not so complicated. Don't make it more than it is. That's all I have to tell people. Hey, Hakorei Shema v'lo kiven libo pasuk rishon shu Shema Yisrael leyatzei dei chavaso. He reads Krias Shema and he doesn't have kavanah for the first pasuk. he's not Yotze his Chiyuv. Hashar im lo kivin libo afilo yakar b'Torah magia b'parshiyos elu b'onas Krias Shema Yotze v'usha kivin libo pas Krishon. He says the only time that's really important, we pass, and it's machlokas in the Gemara, what's the essential part of Mrs. Krias, which is Doraisa, right? Which part of Krias is Doraisa? We just mentioned that Mrs. Doraisa, you have the Shrichos Kavana. So we pass the most lenient shita that only the first pasuk, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that you have to have Kavanah L'Shem Mitzvah. The other ones you don't have Kavanah L'Shem Mitzvah. Now, that's what it seems like from the Shulchan Aruch, right? He brings in the example, your Korah Torah Magia Parshas, you're fixing the Sefer Torah, right? Shekil Nima Pasuk Rishon. All you have to do as intention when you're saying Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that first pasuk you have intention to do the mitzvah. The Mishnah Berurah, I think, distorts what the Shulchan Aruch says. The Mishnah Berurah says, maybe this is, I don't know where he gets this from, but he says that it's a different type of kavanah. It's not kavanah to do the mitzvah. It's kavanah for Pirush Hamilim, to understand the words. You have to know, when you say Shema, you have to think in your mind, here, Yisrael, congregation of Israel, Hashem, God, HaYehovah V'yiyah, I think all these things, we'll talk about that, maybe in the next simon. You have to have the explanation of the words already playing out in your mind. That's not what the Shulchan Aruch sounds like. The Mishnah Berurah says that's what it's talking about. He says, of course, you have to have Kavanah L'Shem Mitzvah for all the parshios, even the third parsha of Krias Shema, because even if it's not right, Dat Dorais, that's Derabanan. He says the Shulchan Aruch here is talking about Pirush Hamilim. To me, it doesn't seem like that. It seems the Shulchan Aruch is paskening that the whole mitzvah Midoraisa of Krias Shema is the first pasuk Midoraisa. So all you have to do is have Kavanah L'Shem Mitzvah, intend to do the mitzvah for the first pasuk. If you intend for the first pasuk, and then you get back to fixing the Sefer Torah, to editing the Sefer Torah, and you're just playing on editing, and you're not doing the mitzvah anymore, and you're still saying the word, that's okay. You're Yotze, because the essential part of the mitzvah is only the first pasuk. Hope you enjoyed today's shir. I hope it was mind-blowing and game-changing for you, and I hope you come out with you go a little easier on yourself when it comes to mitzvah shrichas kavanah and being able to mitzvah Krias Shema. The next simon, next week, Samach Al, is a long one, 26 ifim. Din kama tzricha l'dakte kol hachavim b'Kriyas Shema. Now we're going to find out how much you really have to be very careful and precise in saying Krias Shema. We'll talk more about that next week. Have a good weekend. See you next week.